Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Going to Ground. How's the inner chamber? We've been thinking this last few days about the interior life, the secret places of the heart. And one of the things that makes it difficult to dwell there for long is that there's, well, it's the obvious thing really, isn't it? That there's so much of us there, and it can make the inner life pretty claustrophobic. I have found over the years that the only way I can dwell with myself in a way that doesn't close in is to admit God into the inner place, in both senses of the word, both to admit him in the letting in, to open up a shutter or two in my soul and let the light in. But also there's a sense of almost of concession or confession, of acknowledgement that we need him, and that I can't live on with myself without that help, without that accompaniment inside. When I was considering personal faith as a young man for the first time, really, and as something that not just that I belonged to as part of a family, but that was me and mine, my main worry was that the more there was of God in my life, the less there'd be of me, as if he'd be a rather expansive and dominating house guest that, you'd actually retreat into another secret chamber in order to get away from. But of course, I found that wasn't the case. And the way that the Christian dwells with God inside is principally understood in terms of worship and praise, which is what begins within but opens the soul, it opens the inner place into the outer world, if that makes any sense. And today in the Bible reading set for the church, it's the passage from Luke that we call the Magnificat, which is a really interesting one to consider here. Mary's song on discovering that the life of God was growing inside her. And she uses this well-known and very interesting phrase, "My soul doth magnify the Lord." My soul enlarges God. My soul doth magnify the Lord, and my spirit hath rejoiced in God my Saviour. And so there's the sense of God being enhanced and expanded, his life expanded within us. But interestingly, she then goes on to sing this: "For he that is mighty," that's God, "hath magnified me." So Mary found that admitting God, in saying to God, "Let it be to me according to your will," in her obedience, in her conceding to God, she didn't lose herself. In fact, she found that she'd been magnified in return, that she was able to see herself more clearly, that she was enhanced in that process. And this is what we understand taking place in worship. We feel it to be the case. Now, I'm here sat at one of the most important places in my inner chamber, which I'm just going to try and turn the camera around and show you. This is a bureau, and it was given to my late grandmother, who I told you about yesterday, Lillian Riley, and my father, Henry Rumsey, who was the rector of Corn in Leicestershire, on their marriage in, I think, 1911. And you may just even be able to see there's a plaque just there. And moving this into my study from the garage the other day, and I hadn't sat at it as my own before, since my parents died. And in the drawers, there are all sorts of secret compartments and inner chambers here. There's the book we were talking about yesterday, and here in the drawer are all sorts of things from my dad's old desk drawer that I remember from childhood. Got his rulers here that he used as an engineer, a police whistle, some handy sealing wax, not been used for some time, and this. his magnifying glass, and I remember so well those little items because, and this particularly, I remember the sound of it, the rattle of it, and the feel of it, because when I would go into his study and he would be working on a sermon or something, I'd take it out and look at it, and it enables, of course, us to, when we look through a magnifying glass, we see things, little things more clearly and in an enhanced, enlarged way, but we also see the structure of things. We see how they're composed. And when we magnify God, he becomes visible to us, so to speak, in our soul's eye. But as we are magnified in return, as Mary found, we see that we can look at our own structure, we can see our own composition, how we're made up, if you like, in the light of Christ, in the light of God. And that would be fearful, that would be odd as well, if God was some kind of imposter in our lives. And that is our fear, that our self is necessarily separate from God in order to exist. The Bible would suggest emphatically that the opposite is the case, that if we instead see God as the artist of our life, and we as his artistry, as his creation, if we see God as the composer of our life, we will be able to understand our own composition, and we will be able to be in and with ourselves in a way that is not claustrophobic, not enclosed in the wrong way, but actually that is released in love for God, our Maker, and love for others, our fellow creatures, and love for ourselves too. So friends, may light flood into your inner chamber. May you be able to magnify God and be magnified yourself in return. And God bless you as you go to ground.